Hello, I'm Ibrahim Jude. My name is Ibrahim Jude. Today I'm going to talk about database security and SQL injection attacks. What is database security? Database security refers to the measures taken to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data stored in the database. It involves variable techniques including encryption, access control, and authentication mechanisms. Database security is crucial for protecting sensitive information from unauthorized access, modification, or deletion. Importance of database security. Data is valuable assets for organizations. Uh, breaches can lead to financial losses, reputation damage, and legal consequences. Uh, if you got attacked, you need to fix your damage. The financial losses. You need to fix the damage after. You need to fix the damage after an attack. It could be your software, hardwares, and so on. Reputation damage. Customers lose trust in your organization if they see that you have a weak security, that if you have a weak database security, um, leads that leads them to go to a competitive organization, uh, and you will lose your customers' reputation, and you will lose your customer trust. Database security is critical to protect sensitive information from unauthorized access, modification, or deletion. Uh, Database security gives, for example, authentication gives each user an authorized access. Uh, for example, a user needs only to review the database. You can't give him a modified access as it will be a vulnerability in your database system. It helps build the trust with customers and partners by demonstrating a commitment to protect by demonstrating a commitment to protecting their data. As we said, your reputation is so important to gain trust with customers and partners. Uh, Customers and partners will not work with you if you have a weak database security. SQL injections. SQL injection is a type of attack that exploits vulnerabilities in an application's software to execute malicious SQL statements. It allows attackers to gain unauthorized access to the database, retrieve sensitive information, modify data, or even delete entire tables. Um, for example, if an attacker gets an unauthorized access to the database, he can retrieve all the usernames and passwords, all the sensitive information. Uh, for example, a secret information for the organization, modify data. He can change the data as he want. He can change the usernames and the passwords and get the user and get this account, for example, or even delete entire tables. SQL injection can have severe consequences ranging from data theft to service disruption and financial losses. Uh, if your data got stolen from your organization, your competitors can use it, the attacker can use it against you. Your financial losses, as we said, you need to fix the damage got into your organization, the hardwares, the softwares. How SQL injection works. Attacker inject malicious SQL code into input fields or parameter of a web application. The application failed to properly validate or sanitize the input. allowing the injected SQL code to be executed by the data server. This can result in unauthorized access to the database and compromise of sensitive data. SQL injection attacks can occur through various entry points, including web forms, URL parameters, and cookies. For example, you got into an website, you need to log in with your username and password. You log in, the website fails to properly validate or sanitize the input. Then the attacker injects an SQL code uh, when the website fails to properly validate and sanitize the input. The SQL code, um, the SQL code will be executed by the database server, and he will get unauthorized access to your database. Types of SQL injections. We have so many types of SQL injections. For example, in-band SQL. This is also known as classic SQL injection. It involves using the same communication channels to launch the attack and retrieve the results. This is the most common type of SQL injection. Secondly, out-of-band SQL injection. In cases where direct retrieval of data is not possible, attackers may use alternative channels such as DNS to extract data from the database. Blind SQL injection. The third example is blind SQL injection. Attackers exploit vulnerabilities without directly retrieving data. Instead, they rely on the application's behavior to infer information about the database. Time-based SQL injection. Lastly, time-based SQL injection. Attackers inject SQL queries that cause delays in the application's response, allowing them to determine if the injected queries was executed successfully based on the delay. The impact of a SQL injection. Firstly, data exposure. Attacker can access sensitive information such as usernames, password, credit cards, numbers, and personal details stored in your database. Data modification. In addition to retrieving data, attackers can modify or delete data in the database, leading to integrity issues and data loss. For example, he deleted a table. You lost a whole data from this modification. Another example in integrity issues. A user puts, for example, his password. The attacker changed this password, and you will lose the integrity of this custom. Denial of service. By injecting a malicious SQL query that consumes significant server resources, attackers can disrupt the availability of the database and the associated application. Unauthorized access. SQL injection can be used to bypass authentication mechanisms, gaining unauthorized access to restricted parts of the application or administrative privileges. Common vulnerabilities leading to SQL injection. Lack of input validation. Failure to properly validate user inputs allows attackers to inject malicious SQL codes. Improperly configured access control. Weak or misconfigured weak or misconfigured access controls may enable attackers to execute unauthorized SQL queries. Dynamic SQL queries, applications that construct SQL queries dynamically using user inputs, are more vulnerable to SQL injections if proper precautions are not taken. Failure to sanitize user input. Failure to sanitize or escape special characters in user inputs before executing SQL queries can lead to SQL injection vulnerability. Example of SQL injections: retrieving sensitive information. You can select users where username admin, you get the admin username, modifying data, he can update, delete any data he wants, dropping tables, blind SQL, we talked about blind SQL, preventing SQL injection. Use parameterized queries or prepared statements to separate SQL code from user inputs, input validation and sanitization, to filter out malicious code and SQL commands, principle of least privilege, limit database user permissions to only what is necessary for their tasks. For example, a user task is just to review the database, to view the database. You don't give him, for example, modify access, because it will be a vulnerable point in your database. Regular security audits and penetration testing to identify and address vulnerabilities. You can do continuously penetration testing. For example, say from month to month, you do a penetration testing just for example, just to know, to identify and address if you have any vulnerability. Continuous monitoring and patching. Security audits. Regularly conduct security audits and vulnerabilities assessments to identify and address SQL injection vulnerabilities. Patch management. Keep database management system, DBMS, and associated applications up to date to the latest security patches to mitigate known vulnerabilities. Incident response plan. Develop and implement an incident response plan to quickly detect and respond to SQL injection attack, minimizing their impact on the organization. When you have an incident response attack, when you detect the SQL injection, you can minimize the damage, the type of damage to your organization. Real life examples, those are examples that happened in real life. For example, Sony PlayStation Network breach. In 2011, attackers used SQL injection to access personal information of millions of users. Yahoo Voices breach. Over 450,000 usernames and passwords were exposed due to SQL injection. But for this was a very bad. Equifax breach. 2017, one of the largest data breaches in history, affected 147 million people, was caused by vulnerability exploited via SQL injection. This example highlights the real-world impact and importance of addressing an SQL injection vulnerability. Conclusion. Our conclusion is database security, especially against SQL injection, is crucial for safeguarding sensitive information. Protect your sensitive information, your organization information by implementing preventive measures and staying vigilant. Organizations can mitigate the risk of database breaches and protect their assets. Continuous education and awareness among developers and administrators are essential to ensure best practices and followed in database security. Thank you for your time.